All right, hello YouTube. Welcome back to the Eric Reviews channel. We're going to be doing a Star Wars video today, and I haven't done many Star Wars videos or even had many discussions on things positively about Star Wars in the last, a while part of my life, since really Disney has taken over Star Wars. We had an entire series on this channel, or we started it, and it was about basically the fall of Star Wars and about Disney's buying of it. But today I want to do more of a positive video looking at my top 10 favorite / best scenes of all of Star Wars. And I want to preference the movies. I'm not talking about Clone Wars. I'm not talking about Rebels. Not talking about any of the animated shows, because if I did that, this list would be so incredibly difficult for me to make. So I wanted to stick with just the films. So I just wanted to preference that right away. So people don't think, oh, where's Darth Maul and Obi-Wan, like their last interaction when Darth Maul dies, or Darth Maul and Ahsoka, or I don't know, pick one, right? There's so many good moments from Clone Wars specifically. But I wanted to preference the movies. Now, I also want to preference that this is not the right list. You have every opinion to your own list. Everyone's is going to be different. So there is no right list, but this is just mine, okay? Another thing, I'm just going to say it now. I grew up with the prequels. I have some prequel bias. I love the prequels. I am someone that got into Star Wars because of the prequels, so parts of this list, right, is going to be impacted because I watched the prequels before I watched the originals, right? So when I was a kid, I watched them in the actual order of narratively, historically in Star Wars, I watched them that way. I didn't watch them in the way they were released. That is something that I think does need to be told to the audience just to know where I'm kind of coming from with this list. I'll try to explain as we go forward. I also have some guest appearances from some of my friends as well to explain some of the scenes. So, number 10, I want to start out right away, and this is, I think, it's one of those scenes that I think is almost underrated, which is kind of crazy, but number 10 is the binary sunset, the famous Luke scene looking out when he's at Tatooine. I'll have it up on screen. It's such a great shot. It's a great scene. I mean, think about when you look at film students. This is A New Hope right away as one of those movies where you look at for how to make a movie. And this shot, the visuals are fantastic for what they could do back then. The music is insane. Luke's theme is great. It basically becomes the Jedi theme as a whole. It's bone chilling, right? It's some of the best music, visual work, and then also think about what it does for the character of Luke. Luke is this character that we're still getting to know, and it shows that he's searching for something more in his life. He's very similar to Anakin in that way. Anakin and Luke, very similar in the way they kind of start out and what they're kind of motivated by, and Luke wants more. He wants to leave the planet. He wants to explore and do things like that. And so this scene has so much significance for Luke as a character and our understanding of him, but also just from a cultural and theatrical impact that it had, as it's a scene we analyze to death on how to make a good scene and how to implement all the other features outside of just doing, okay, a good story, right? How do you implement that story well in a very compelling and satisfying way? And this is one of those scenes from A New Hope that really understands how to do that. And this has just always been a personal fan favorite for me personally. So number 9. Now, number 9 is another one that I don't think, if you're not a prequel fan, this is not going to be in your top 10. But to me, I also want to preference because number 9 is basically Anakin's entire arc in Attack of the Clones with the Sand People. So basically him talking to his mother for the last time, him actually killing the Sand People, and then a little bit of after that in his kind of talk with Padme and how he says, I slaughtered them. I'm kind of basically making that one entire basically scene or set piece because it all carries the same note. But if I was going to pick one part of it, it would be Anakin's last meeting with his mom. And so you might be thinking, why did I pick this? I picked this because it's a very significant moment to the story of Anakin Skywalker. Anakin being my favorite character. It's this moment where it's significant to Revenge of the Sith and even Phantom Menace because it calls back to that movie as well. And you see this part of it. The whole movie has been building up that Anakin is feeling resentful of his teachings from the Jedi because he feels like he's being held back. He feels like he can do more. He should be stronger, more powerful. And that all comes full circle with this moment with his mother, Shmi, because in his mind, he thinks he wasn't strong enough, right? He wasn't wise enough to come save her before she dies. It's this really powerful moment. And even think about the traumatic experience this is. You know, Anakin watching his mother die in his arms, telling her that basically she loves him, that she's proud of him. It's a heartbreaking moment. And regardless of what you think of Hayden Christensen's acting in this movie or George Lucas's direction for the character of Anakin in this movie, this is a moment, and I think this entire sequence, right? Killing the Sand People, there's just so many subtle things where it's like you hear Qui-Gon going no, and you see Anakin and what he tells Padme. It's that glimpse of Vader to come, and it's just so much for the character of Anakin to me. And I think this is one of the best parts of Attack of the Clones, right? I think if you look at Attack of the Clones, the best elements of the film, a lot of it is like the Tatooine arc with Anakin, and then the Geonosis stuff, kind of that back third. So to me, this is just a very important moment for the character of Anakin. It's why I put it up here. And again, a bit of biased because I love the prequel so much, and this is just one of those scenes that for me personally had to be on here. Number 8 is going to be Rogue One's Vader hallway scene. This scene, very end of Rogue One, is, I don't even know how to explain it, how badass it is, right? It's not like a huge character moment or anything like kind of the last two were. It's just Darth Vader unleashing his anger, his wrath on these rebel soldiers. It plays out like a horror film because you know all of these dudes are gonna die. They have no chance. The visuals in this scene are insane. The music is insane. I don't even know how to explain how badass this was to see in theaters, right? Rogue One is pretty much the only Star Wars movie that I have seen in theaters. I didn't see Force Awakens, didn't see The Last Jedi, and did not see The Rise of Skywalker. I've seen all the movies, but just not in theater. And so when I remember distinctively watching this scene on the big screen, I don't know what else needs to be said about the scene. Like, you know why this scene is on this list. Number 7, I have a scene from Return of the Jedi. Luke throwing down his lightsaber, not wanting to fight and killing his father, Darth Vader, and the fight with Darth Vader and the Emperor spurring him on, trying to turn him to the dark side. It's this very powerful moment for Luke because it's been this entire plot line that's been set up since really Empire with the Dagobah, where it's Luke doesn't want to become Darth Vader. He doesn't want to turn evil. He doesn't want to become this pawn for the Emperor. And I think it's so great because it's set up so perfectly, right? With everything that's been going on in this trilogy. And when you see Luke trying to get to his father, for his father to come back to the light, and he knows he's still good in there, that there's still good inside of Darth Vader and Anakin. And seeing Luke finally throw down his lightsaber, says, no, I'm not doing this. It's a powerful moment that it's one of those moments that I think Return of the Jedi, you know, it has its flaws, but the one thing that I think really holds it up is the entire Palpatine, Vader, Luke dynamic in this scene. And then you're just having full circle, right? Because I'm continuing on. I'm not just saying it's just this moment of him throwing the lightsaber down. That is part of it. But then watching as Darth Vader and or Anakin redeems himself, throwing down Sidious and killing him. I don't give a shit about Rise of Skywalker. It's not in my canon. In my canon, Palpatine's dead. So, yeah. I do think the sequels take away from that moment, and that's why I don't count them. They don't count in my mind. And that statement, maybe, you know, why there's no sequels on this list. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Number 6 is going to be the Hoth battle. I'm going to have my friend Luke explain it, and then I'll kind of talk a little bit about why I thought I was going to put it on this list as well.
When Eric asked me to discuss my favorite Star Wars scene, it was no simple task. As a Clone fanboy, I was nearly going to go the route of discussing the Battle of Geonosis, but that just didn't feel right. the best scene hands down has to be the Battle of Hoth. I mean, this is the first moment where we get a sense of the war, and the franchise literally called Star Wars. Don't get me wrong, the first Death Star battle is amazing, but it feels more like a tactical strike than a real battle. Here on Hoth, we see the combined arms of land and air at full display. The rebel troops are fighting an uphill battle, and they know that. They know this won't be a fight in terms of defending their fort and repelling the stormtroopers. Rather, this is just about holding off the Empire long enough for the transports to make their escape. The rebel troops in the trenches and manning the turrets, and the pilots flying the dinky snowspeeders are making the ultimate sacrifice, fighting for the hope that the galaxy will be a better place. And to top it all off, we get the best piece of Star Wars canon, the fucking nipple cannon, disabling Star Destroyers since 1980. But it's not just the story that sells the scene, it's also the presentation. I spent way too much time rewatching behind-the-scenes footage about ILM's role in bringing Star Wars to life. The way the Imperial Walkers march through the snow make the impression that they're really several stories tall. The snowspeeders zipping through their legs give off the effect that you're really inside the ships. And all of this was done through the work of expertly crafted miniatures and models, not CGI. That's the part that really sells it for me. The fact that they use physical, tangible models. Unlike the computer stuff, these are real, and will always be real. All of this combined gives the scene spectacular detail, and seals in the used and abused atmosphere of the original trilogy.
So yeah, thank you, Luke, for doing that part of this. And I think, to me personally, where I enjoyed this is it's just a great action set piece, right? Great way to kickstart the movie that the Empire is so strong that it doesn't matter, right? The rebellion, they can put up a fight and they can do all this, but the Empire just rolls through them, right? Just like the title, it really sets the pace of The Empire Strikes Back, that, yeah, our rebels may have gotten a good shot in A New Hope and really maybe balanced it a little bit, but it's still not close. The Empire has more manpower. They have more technology. And just seeing this all play out, it's insane the way we see this battle play out with the AT-ATs, which are really insane, awesome design that they were able to make during this time. An incredible feat cinematically. I can't say enough about this battle. I know Luke talked about it a lot, so I'm not going to really harp on it too much, but yeah, just a great way to set the tone for the second movie of the original trilogy. Number 5. I went back and forth on number 5 and 6 because they're both really well done. But to me personally, I think the Battle of Geonosis has to be on this list for me. Being as though I am a prequel fan, what we get here, and I'm talking about mainly when the clones arrive after kind of the arena stuff, it's just insane, right? Seeing the clones with all these ships, seeing Jedi lead these clone legions, watching this full scale just battle. It's just, I know people like to say, oh, and clown on the prequels for the CGI, but this looks beautiful. I mean, even going back, and my friend Luke sent me a clip just to rewatch how great it was, because I was having some doubts on where to place this, and it just looks insane. This war, watching what we're going to see in the Clone Wars really play out, but it's just visually stunning. It's this culmination of, okay, wait, we know, right? If you're somebody that likes the originals and you watch the originals before the prequels, you know the Jedi are going to come down. So you're sitting here and you're going, wait, this clone army, yeah, it's helping the Jedi win this battle, but inevitably it's going to be their end, kind of like the last scene of Attack of the Clones shows. And so it's just great moments. And even when you see like this combat where you're just seeing really the blaster bolts, right? Because it's so, there's just dust everywhere, smokes everywhere from the shooting. It's a sand planet. It's just visually is stunning. And watching all the different types of vehicles and aspects that George Lucas brings to the screen in this battle, I think is why it's a bit higher than Empire Strikes Back. I think Empire Strikes Back has more of an emotional tie, or is more crucial to like the plot, I guess, or has more like emotion to it. Whereas I think the Battle of Geonosis is much more stunning. It's much more, this is what Star Wars was always pictured to be, right? And it's also the starting of the Clone Wars. So I think both of them are great. I don't think, if you think the Battle of Hoth is better, no problems with that. If you think Battle of Geonosis is better, no problems with that either. So number 4, again, this is a weird one for me because I had to put it high up because it is such an iconic moment. It changed Star Wars forever. But I do have to realize, for me personally, the I am your father moment in Empire Strikes Back, which is not my number 4, is weird because it wasn't a surprise to me. Again, I watched the prequels first. So when we get to some of the stuff higher up above this, that's why it's going to be higher in a lot of ways. But this moment of Luke realizing that Darth Vader is his father is chilling, because think about what I talked about with Luke throwing down his lightsaber and the Dagobah stuff. Luke, the whole time, was not wanting to become Darth Vader, and to find out that his own father fell to the darkness, it's almost in Luke's mind, not only is he terrified to learn that this is his father, but also in his mind, he's thinking, well, if my father succumbed to this, does that doom me as well? It just recontextualizes everything. Because now you're sitting here going, wait a minute, wait a second. This moment is so iconic. It changed the entire landscape of Star Wars. And again, if you're someone that was watching this when Star Wars first was being released, this would be way higher for you. And I realize that. But to me, it didn't hit that way because I watched the prequels first. So yeah, that's just the way I look at it. Number 3 is Duel of Fates. And this, again, what I'm talking about when I mean the Duel of Fates, I mean from the moment that Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon start battling Darth Maul to when Obi-Wan beats Darth Maul. That entire section. This has, if not the best, one of the best soundtracks of all time. The Duel of Fates soundtrack it's iconic. It's insane. I would say it's probably top 3 for me personally. The actual choreography for this scene is unmatched by any Star Wars fighting we've ever seen. Even later on, we get the Battle of the Heroes, Obi-Wan and Anakin. I think this is still better. Watching the training that these actors went through to perform the Duel of Fates stuff is insane. And so when you look at it and you're going visually, this is what I think everyone in their primes of Star Wars believed a Star Wars fight would be. With 2, or really 3, experienced warriors with lightsabers. It just is amazing to watch. The atmosphere is insane. It builds so much to it. And when you think about what the consequences of this fight are, right? Qui-Gon's death is single-handedly the most important moment in all of Star Wars. That might be a controversial take, but if Qui-Gon doesn't die, Qui-Gon ends up training Anakin. Anakin, I am 100% sure, does not turn to the dark side if Qui-Gon is his master. The two were very similar. Qui-Gon would have understood a lot of Anakin's issues that the Jedi Council and Obi-Wan specifically just didn't. They did not help him, whereas Qui-Gon would have done that. And so even when you think about Count Dooku in a lot of ways goes to the dark side almost because of Qui-Gon's death. Because of the way we see that the Jedi Council, or the Jedi Order specifically, seems to have failed Qui-Gon. In the way that we see not only the Jedi Order, but the Republic failing, right? The Senate failing to help Naboo. It's a moment that, yes, where it is insanely powerful, it's insanely important, it's great to watch, it makes the Phantom Menace. Without this, the Phantom Menace is not nearly as good. Well, some people hate the movie, but I personally like Phantom Menace. It would not be the same movie. And yeah, I mean, again, I have a personal bias because Darth Maul is pretty much my favorite character in Star Wars. I've been him for Halloween 2 different times. So there's also that bias. The fact that you also have to keep in the back of your mind the Darth Maul arc that comes because of this movie. Like, it's just, yeah. I mean, to me, it's just one of those where it had to be up there for me. Number 2 will be done by my friend Logan, but it is going to be Anakin versus Obi-Wan, and I also have some stuff to talk about after when he is done.
Okay, so my favorite scene is the Battle of the Heroes, or Anakin versus Obi-Wan, or Darth Vader, whichever you choose to call Anakin. And the reason it's my favorite scene is I found it very interesting to see Anakin, who was very skilled at being an offensive fighter, and Obi-Wan, who is a very defensive fighter, go against each other, being not masters, but pros at their skill sets. So it was kind of cool to see them in their prime of what they're good at and just see how that works out. And then I also enjoyed how it was more or less two men who had been around each other all their life, and they were brothers or almost like a father-son group. And so to see that change because the one turning evil was very interesting to watch how Obi-Wan had to react as he's fighting, thinking, this is still my brother. But then at the same time, or then in the next instant, he would sit there and think, that's actually my enemy. It's not the guy I once knew. And then also the fact that in the movie, it's a whole like 16 minutes of fighting, making it the longest duel in cinema history as of right now. And I think that's just amazing as it is there. And the choreography is also just phenomenal for the whole 16 minutes of it.
So again, I think the biggest part of this is what the entire trilogy was building to. Anakin and Obi-Wan fighting to define the fate of the galaxy. Again, like I talked about with Duel of Fates, a top 3 soundtrack for the fight, this climax of the entire thing, insane. Again, the choreography right behind Duel of Fates, but still fantastic. I mean, this is just some incredible work that was done. And I mean, for me as a kid, I remember trying to like replicate this at recess or something, pretending to be a Jedi, and everything that's come to this. And just even, again, I extend this all the way to when Obi-Wan leaves Anakin, right? Their fight until this moment. And just the entire scene, the pure acting that we get, Ewan McGregor, I don't even know what to say. The "You Were the Chosen One" speech just leaves me with chills every time I watch it because it's so impactful. It's the breaking of the Republic. It's the finalization of the Republic's fall. And the emotion it has here, because Anakin is one of my favorite characters. Again, he's probably right behind Darth Maul, right? And watching his turn is incredible. And to me, is like, again, I watched the prequels first, so watching this Anakin versus Obi-Wan, I genuinely didn't know who was going to win when I first saw it. And yeah, I don't know what else I can say that Logan didn't say, but to me, it's just up there. And number one, to me, I think this is obvious. And the fact that I've seen, I kind of did some research just to see what people thought about the scenes of Star Wars and what were their favorites. The fact that Order 66 isn't in a lot of people's it's disrespectful. Like, Order 66, don't care what you say, has some of the best music behind it. It has some of the best visuals. And what I mean by Order 66, okay, this is very broad. I realistically mean like Anakin coming in when Palpatine's about to die to the Jedi being executed. That entire sequence is Order 66. For me personally, you might have your differences with that, but that's what I mean. And again, as someone who was watching this for the first time, again, you have to put this in the eyes of me being like 6 or 7 or somewhere around there, of watching this for the first time, watching the good guys, or in my opinion, back then, the good guys dying in an instant, watching Anakin's turn when I didn't know it was going to happen. I didn't know who Darth Vader was. Watching Anakin's turn, and I know so many people, not a lot of people, I think there's a group of people that believe that Anakin's turn to the dark side was too quick. And I've never disagreed with an opinion more than that. Because let's just forget about Clone Wars. I'm not even going to put Clone Wars in there. Clone Wars does a lot to really help it. But think about Anakin's journey, right? The failures of the Republic. The first movie is really the failure of the Senate. That's how Palpatine gets into power, because of the corruptness, because of their inaction. So when you put that system together with the Jedi Order, which is failing on pretty much everything, right? They're said to be these peacekeepers of the galaxy. There's slavery in this world, right? The Hutts have the Hutts basically control an entire sector of this world. How does that happen? I thought the Jedi were in charge. Apparently not. They have all of these strict things that don't seem very Jedi-like. They're very arrogant. They are so cocky that the Sith could never come back and all these things. And when you look at Anakin as this kid, and he's this person that when you look at his personality is he's almost a double-edged sword, because on one hand, one of his best characteristics is he cares a lot about his loved ones, people that are closest to him. So again, you kind of loop Clone Wars into this, but not, I'll do it just because if you've only watched the movies. His mother, right? The person he loved the most, his only parent. He then gets Qui-Gon, who seemed like would be a father figure. The person who was going to train him, believed in him, dies. Shmi dies in the second movie. Padme, there is a threat that she is going to die in the third movie because of childbirth. And so when you think about how Shmi was going to die and how Anakin saw that, and then that repeats with Padme, okay, well now in Anakin's mind, he's thinking, well, shit, Padme is going to die. My visions don't lie. It's already happened before. So you have that aspect of it. Then you also have the aspect of it that Anakin is someone that is not a strict follower of the Jedi Code, where someone like Obi-Wan is. He is someone that really believes more in, as long as we get it done, it doesn't really matter the cost as much. That's not to say he doesn't have morality or any of those things, but he's much more flexible to the rules than, say, someone like Obi-Wan. And so when you put all these things together, right, and you think about the mistrust that Anakin has for the Jedi, think about even movie 2, right? The second movie is all about, like I already talked about, Anakin and how he feels like he's being held back. He is constantly being basically talked down to, people not trusting him. Mace Windu is someone that constantly just distrusts Anakin right off the get-go, doesn't give him a chance. He's instantly, when he comes back to Coruscant in the first movie, where they're like, yeah, we're not going to train you. So you look at that. You also look at the part of it that Anakin then comes into the third movie. And think about all these things, right? The Jedi have been showing that they are falling as an order. They are asking Anakin to go spy on Palpatine, right? Even though they might have the right of it, that Palpatine is a Sith. Well, they don't know he's a Sith, but, you know, he has too much power type thing. That's not the Jedi Code. And that's all Anakin has. Anakin has the Jedi Code, right? So if the Council start telling him to do things that aren't on that Jedi Code, they could start doing some morally gray stuff. They've already given a lot of reasons for Anakin to not trust them. They grant him a seat on the Council, but not Master. That's a very weird thing. That's never happened before in history. Anakin's just gone through an entire war. He's a war hero at this point. It's just constantly, right? The Council taking advantage of Anakin is how it feels, and not treating him with any type of respect, dignity, those things. And this is not even to put into this, but if you have watched Clone Wars and you see all these things happen to Anakin, all these things with the Republic and the Senate and the Jedi Order, this just fits into place so perfectly with something like Ahsoka. So, yeah, there's a lot here when it comes to Anakin's betrayal that I think some people don't really fully get, because when you get to this point now, when Palpatine is basically revealed as a Sith, and Anakin turns, I want to bring up one specific line, right, about his turn, which I find fascinating. Palpatine says that Count Dooku is too dangerous to be kept alive. Some of the best writing that George Lucas has ever done, in my opinion, is he then flips it and has Mace Windu say the same thing about Palpatine. So the thing here is, now at this point with Anakin, he's almost seeing the two sides as, what's the difference? Right? They're both not good. Neither one is being truthful to Anakin, probably. And when you think about the Jedi side, like, what are the Jedi offering Anakin? They're not basically helping him with emotional support. They're not helping him figure out this stuff with Padme. They won't accept Padme being Anakin's wife and the children they're going to have. So what is Palpatine offering Anakin? Somebody that Anakin has looked up to and been somewhat of a father figure to him for years at this point. He's offering to help Anakin save the one that he loves. And what do we talk about here? That Anakin is willing to save the people that he cares about almost no matter the cost. And so when you get to this decision where Mace Windu is about to kill Palpatine, and Anakin, it almost seems like a reflex, right? There's indecision here. This isn't Anakin just fully turning on the Jedi right here and there, but as soon as he cuts off Mace Windu's hand, you can't go back. There's no going back on this, right? He has now basically gotten a Jedi Master killed, one of the highest ranking ones. There's no going back. So even when you think about the dialogue that happens directly after that, where Anakin just says, please just help me save Padme's life. He doesn't fully commit to it, but he knows that this is what he has to do now. There's no going back. He can't go back to the Jedi Order and go, yeah, I killed Mace Windu, basically. Yeah. Like, so that's the thing to me is like, Anakin was never fully dedicated until everything happened and there was no going back. And so that leads to like the second part of this is just Order 66 is just the emotional weight of the fall of the Jedi. All these things have been built up through all the previous movies and the third movie's beginning. And it leads to this scenario in which you're left in darkness. Revenge of the Sith ends on a very hollow note, right? Me as a viewer, not watching the originals, leaving on this note where Yoda, Obi-Wan are going into hiding and all that. I know it's not part of Order 66 necessarily, but the scene just recontextualizes all of Star Wars. It just changes everything. Think about why Disney now is milking Order 66 forever, right? They keep doing it over and over and over again because it's the most iconic scene that's ever happened in Star Wars, in my opinion. It's the most impactful. And what does it do that's so important? It changes the atmosphere of Star Wars so that in the next set of movies, we have a different story, right? Think about the way Return of the Jedi ends. You're thinking, okay, Luke is now going to start heading the new Order of the Jedi. There's going to be a new Republic headed by Leia and hopefully Han helping. And as you can see on here, there is no sequel movie on this list. Because I think the sequels are pretty much an insult to Star Wars. And everything that I talked about with these 10 scenes or parts of a movie are fantastic. And I cannot put a single thing in here from the sequels, whether that's character work, whether that's a really good visual scene that also has some emotional impact with it. There isn't that in the sequels for me. And maybe that's because I don't buy into the sequels. Maybe it's because I just don't like what they did to the characters in the sequels. That's my bias. Let me know what you guys would have put on here differently. There's a ton other ones you could have done in this, but I would love to see your guys' opinions. It also is a little telling that I had one scene from all of Disney Star Wars on this list. I did consider another one from Rogue One, kind of the battling scene that you kind of see at the later stages of the film, but I was just like, I thought there was other things that I liked more. So thank you guys all for watching, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.